Most of the 2018 NFL draft class members are going to be entering their fourth year in the NFL, and this is going to be a big year for a lot of these players. And so far, it has produced numerous stars like Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Baker Mayfield, Nick Chubb, Saquon Barkley, Quentin Nelson, Calvin Ridley, DJ Moore, Denzel Ward, Jair Alexander, Jesse Bates, Minkah Fitzpatrick, Derwin James, Roquan Smith, Fred Warner, Darius Leonard, and a whole lot more. This draft class was stacked, and I can make an entire video on all the stars that came from this class. However, like all draft classes, it does have its fair share of busts, and in today's video, I wanted to talk about one of the more interesting busts from this class, and that is Josh Rosen. In today's video, I want to talk about him and his career so far. Before we do get started, make sure you guys go ahead and check out my podcast if you guys haven't already, and you guys want to get more sports content from me. The link is in the description below. But without further ado, let's get this video started. Josh was born into a pretty rich family in Torrance, California. He grew up in Southern Cal, and his dad was a spine surgeon, but was also a really talented ice skater. In fact, his dad was so good to the point where he almost qualified for the Winter Olympics in the 70s, and his mom, on the other hand, was the captain of the Princeton lacrosse team at one point. And it's safe to say, sports were in Josh's blood, and to add on, Josh's sister Beatrice was a two-time D3 tennis champion. Growing up, Josh was actually a pretty big tennis guy. He was really gifted at the sport of tennis, and so much so that at the age of 12, he was the #1 player from his age group in Southern Cal and was top 50 in the entire nation. However, Josh, he was also introduced into football when he was in elementary school, and right before high school, he would switch from being a tennis player to a football player. He'd attend St. John Bosco High School in Bellflower, California, and he was great in high school to say the least. In his career at St. John Bosco, he had career stats of 8,473 passing yards, 90 passing touchdowns, 20 interceptions, 1,139 rushing yards, and 14 rushing touchdowns. And his best season would be his junior season year of high school, as he would accumulate stats of 3,200 passing yards, 39 passing touchdowns, 7 interceptions, 416 rushing yards, and 8 rushing touchdowns. In his senior year, he was named the LA Times Player of the Year, Long Beach Press Telegram Dream Team Player of the Year, USA Today High School All-American, and Southern California Jewish Sports Hall of Fame's Male High School Player of the Year. And to cap it all off, he even had a 4.3 GPA, and it's safe to say his childhood, it was pretty good. According to 24/7 Sports, he was a 5-star recruit and was the number 11 quarterback in the country. He would receive offers from UCLA, Akron, Duke, Florida State, and California, but ultimately, he would choose the Bruins. And Josh would start as a true freshman at UCLA. He'd have a pretty solid junior season with 3,669 passing yards, 23 passing touchdowns, and 11 interceptions. And the Bruins would finish with an 8-5 record, which was good for third in the Pac-12 South. And this included a 399 passing yard, 3 passing touchdown performance versus the California Golden Bears, and that year he would be named a Pac-12 Freshman Offensive Player of the Year, and you'd also receive Freshman All-American honors. Unfortunately, they would lose in the Foster Farms Bowl to Nebraska, but overall, it was a good season. In his sophomore season, he would regress a little bit with 1,915 passing yards, 10 passing touchdowns, and 5 interceptions. However, he did only play 6 games since in a game against Arizona State, he would suffer a shoulder injury that would sideline him for the rest of the year. And due to that, the Bruins would regress to a 4-8 record and finished second last in the Pac-12 South. The 2017-18 college football season would be his final year with UCLA, and Josh would really show out. Rosen would pass for 3,756 passing yards, 26 passing touchdowns, and 10 interceptions. And keep in mind, he missed 2 games, and this included an electrifying performance versus Texas A&M, in which he had 491 passing yards and 4 passing touchdowns. And UCLA would win that game and came back from a 34-point deficit, which is the largest in Bruins history. However, that did not translate to a ton of team success, as unfortunately UCLA only went 6-7, and nonetheless, it was still a good season for Josh Rosen. He was voted the second team All Pac-12, and in his career there, he had amassed 9,340 passing yards, 59 passing touchdowns, and 26 interceptions. And after his junior year in college, he would declare for the 2018 NFL Draft. The 2018 NFL Draft was loaded with QB talent. You had the reigning Heisman winner in Oklahoma's Baker Mayfield, the rival across the street in USC's Sam Darnold, Wyoming's Josh Allen, and 2016's Heisman winner in Louisville's Lamar Jackson. And of course, Mr. Chosen Rosen. Josh Rosen, by the way. Many people thought that there could be as many as 4 to 5 quarterbacks go in the top 10 in 2018. And in the build-up to the draft that year, he was praised for his good footwork and accuracy, but there were concerns about his durability given the injury he did suffer in his second season at UCLA, his mobility, and his character. He was essentially known as one of those he's not crazy talented and doesn't have elite arm strength, but he's a good pocket passer type of guy. Kind of like Mac Jones from this past year's class, and many people thought he'd be a top 15 pick in the 2018 NFL Draft. And on April 26, 2018, he would be selected by the Arizona Cardinals with a 10th pick in the 2018 NFL Draft. And after the draft that year, Josh would make the statement, "There were 9 mistakes ahead of me, and I will make sure that over the next decade or so that they will know they made a mistake." We're going to be coming back to this statement later. Let's wait for that. Anyways, Josh would not play until week 3 of the 2018 NFL season, as in a game against the Chicago Bears in which they were behind by only 2 points. He had entered the game with just 4:31 remaining in the game, and all they needed was just one drive to kick a field goal or punch the ball into the end zone for 6. Josh would complete 4 out of 7 passes for 36 yards. However, on a 4th and 5 with 1:16 remaining, he had tossed an interception that would seal the Cards' fate as they had opened up the year 0-3. He would be named the Week 4 starter against the division rival Seattle Seahawks, and Rosen, he would have a decent performance, going 15 of 27 passing for 180 yards and a score. However, the Cards would fall just short, losing 20-17. And the following 2 weeks would be okay for Josh as well, as against the division rival 49ers, Josh would toss 10 completions for 170 yards and a touchdown, and Zona would get their first win of the season. The following week versus Minnesota, he had tossed 29 passes on 31 tries for 240 yards, but 0 scores and a pick. Plus, the Cardinals, they would lose that game. Then there was week 7 versus Denver, which was an absolute disaster, to put it simply. In fact, I could have used a much meaner word, but I'm not going to. In that game, Rosen was terrible, going 21 for 39 for 194 yards, 1 touchdown, but 3 interceptions, 2 of which went for touchdowns, 3 fumbles, and he was sacked 6 times. And to add salt to the wound, the Broncos would win 45-10. And I'm sure Cardinals fans would love to forget about that game, and I'm sure Josh Rosen would also love to forget about that game. Now, the following week, he would play way better, going 23 of 40 for 252 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception. In Arizona, they would win that game, completing a sweep of the division rival 49ers. And from that point on, life was not too good for Rosen or the Cardinals. He had some decent performances, but for the most part, he was not very good. Neither were the Arizona Cardinals. Arizona would finish with a 3-13 record, which was good for worst in the NFL, and Josh's stats for the year would be 2,278 passing yards, 11 passing touchdowns, and 14 interceptions. It was a truly depressing season for Cards fans and Josh Rosen. And during the 2019 NFL Draft, Arizona had a tough decision to make. At the time, the 2018 Heisman winner in Oklahoma's Kyler Murray had just declared for the NFL Draft, and many people thought he might go number 1 to the Arizona Cardinals at the time. Arizona had a tough decision on whether they should stick with Rosen or move on from him and take Kyler Murray. I mean, Rosen was just a rookie, and sometimes they do get time to get used to the NFL, and you should give him some time. And along with that, his supporting cast was not very good, so it was understandable to give him a chance at the time. It really was. But as we all know, Arizona, they would take Kyler Murray first overall and would ship off Rosen to the Miami Dolphins in exchange for a 2019 second-round pick and a 2019 fifth-round pick. Many people had hope for Josh Rosen and thought he could bounce back in 2019 after a terrible rookie season, but unfortunately, it was not much better in South Beach. To start out the season, he would be the backup behind Ryan Fitzpatrick, but after a terrible 0-2 start, Josh was named the starter for Week 3. He'd actually have two okay performances versus the Cowboys and Chargers, both of which ended in losses for Miami, but in Week 6 versus the Washington Red football team, I don't know what to call him. I'm gonna get doxxed if I say the old name, and I'm gonna get in trouble if I say the old name, so I don't know what the hell to call them. He was terrible. As 3 quarters into the game, he was benched for Ryan Fitzpatrick, and Josh only tossed 85 yards and 2 picks up until that point. And that would be the last game he ever played in a Dolphins uniform. He would suit up, but he wouldn't exactly, play for them. He'd finish with an ugly stat line of 567 yards, 1 passing touchdown, and 5 interceptions. At the same time, many people felt he wasn't given a good hand as the Dolphins supporting cast was not very good, and they absolutely gutted the roster of like all the talent they had, and it was clear they were not trying to be a good team, and that was a very fair point to make at the time. But nonetheless, in the offseason of 2020, Miami, they would part ways with him, and they would take Alabama's Tua Tagovailoa 5th overall in the draft that year. After his stint in South Beach, Josh would sign with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers practice squad in September of 2020. He'd stay there until the 49ers signed him to their active roster, and he would be active in San Francisco's last 2 contests, but he did not exactly get some reps in those games. And in the 2021 offseason, he would actually sign a 1-year contract extension with the 49ers, and it looks like he'll be the team's 3rd string behind Jimmy Garoppolo and Trey Lance. And looking back on his career, I gotta say, Josh had a really weird and really complicated NFL career. There's a lot of ways you can view his career. I think we can all agree he was not good. No matter how much of a believer you were in him, or even if you're still a fan of him now, there is no denying he was not good in the NFL. But at the same time, it's fair to say that he wasn't exactly dealt the best hand, and those terrible supporting casts definitely had a part to do in his poor play. And along with that, no organization really committed to him and gave him a fair shot, which sort of ties in the terrible supporting cast argument. But it's also fair to say that he might have been a victim of karma when he spat out the 9 mistakes line. And I gotta say, that was not a good line. That was not a good thing to say. Personally, my opinion is not too simple on this whole Josh Rosen saga. I gotta admit, that 9 mistakes statement, as I said before, was idiotic as hell. I get what he was trying to look confident, but the way he said it made it seem as if other guys were bad prospects. At the same time, I do feel kind of bad for him. The NFL is also a business, and he wasn't always given a fair chance, considering the teams he had were very bad. And he was essentially given up in his rookie season. Hopefully Josh has learned from his mistakes though, and maybe one day he will revive his NFL career. I don't think he will live up to the hype many people thought he did coming out of the draft. However, maybe he can be a high-end backup, and maybe he can last a lot longer in the NFL. But without further ado, that is going to be the end of today's video. Make sure you guys go ahead and check out my podcast as said before, and also hit that like button if you guys haven't already and you guys enjoy this type of this video, as it really does help out the channel. And also make sure to subscribe if you guys are new and enjoy this type of content so you don't miss out on any new videos like this. Plus, we're on the road to 1,000 subscribers, and once we hit our goal, I am finally going to do a face reveal. But without further ado, I'm out, you guys.